Today, we're breaking down the 5 most common disasters that ruin heirloom tomatoes. And more importantly, I'm going to show you exactly how to dodge them for a harvest you can actually brag about. We'll look at each problem, get to the real cause, and walk through simple, actionable solutions. So, if you're ready to stop guessing and start growing your best heirlooms ever, you're in the right place. And hey, if you find this guide helpful, do me a favor and hit that like button so more gardeners can find these solutions. Now let's get into the first and possibly most infuriating tomato disaster. First up is the one every tomato grower dreads: blossom end rot. You see a beautiful big tomato just starting to blush. You turn it over and there it is, a dark, sunken, leathery patch on the bottom. It looks like it's rotting from the inside out, and in a way it is. It's a total gut punch. The problem, the visual is unmistakable. A dark, water-soaked spot appears on the blossom end of the fruit, the side opposite the stem. This spot gets bigger and darker, eventually turning black, sunken, and leathery. It loves to show up on the first fruits of the season, which makes it especially discouraging. The cause for years, the common wisdom was, you need more calcium. People would rush to add crushed eggshells or bone meal. But here's the secret. For almost every home gardener, your soil has plenty of calcium. The problem isn't a lack of calcium in the soil, it's a lack of calcium in the fruit. It's a calcium delivery issue. Calcium can only travel from the roots up into the tomato through water. So the #1 cause of blossom end rot is inconsistent watering. When your plant goes through a dry spell, even a short one, that flow of water and calcium gets cut off. By the time you water it again, the fruit has kept growing without that key nutrient, causing the cells at the end to collapse and die. It's a plant world problem, not a disease. The solution, the fix, is almost laughably simple. Be consistent. Water your tomatoes deeply and regularly, aiming for about 1 to 2 inches of water per week, depending on your climate. Soaker hoses or drip irrigation are your best friends because they deliver water right to the soil and keep the leaves dry, which helps prevent other diseases. Part 2 of the solution is mulching. A 2 to 4 inch layer of organic mulch like straw, shredded leaves, or compost is a total game changer. Mulch helps the soil hold on to moisture, stopping those wild, wet, dry swings that caused the problem in the first place. Consistent water and a good layer of mulch will solve blossom end rot for the vast majority of gardeners out there. Alright, you've got blossom end rot handled. Now let's talk about the next issue that loves to ruin a perfect tomato right at the finish line: cracking. You've been eyeing a beautiful brandywine as it ripens to perfection. A big summer storm rolls through, and the next morning you find it split wide open. The problem? You'll see 2 main types of cracks. Concentric cracks are those little circles that form a ring around the top of the tomato. Radial cracks are the more dramatic splits that run down the sides from the stem. Either way, they're an open invitation for mold and pests to move in and ruin the fruit. This is especially common in heirlooms just as they hit peak ripeness. The cause, just like blossom end rot, cracking is all about water. It happens when the inside of the tomato grows faster than the skin can stretch. The classic trigger is a sudden, heavy downpour of water after it's been dry. The plant greedily sucks up all that water and pumps it straight into the fruit. The flesh swells up, but the skin, which got a little tough and inelastic during the dry spell, just can't keep up and splits under the pressure. That's why a heavy rain after a hot, dry week is the perfect recipe for cracked tomatoes. The solution, you guessed it, consistency is key. Keeping the soil evenly moist is your best defense. That means regular, deep watering during dry spells so the ground never completely turns to dust. A thick layer of mulch will work wonders here too, by acting as a buffer. Here's another pro tip. Watch the weather forecast. If you have tomatoes that are almost ripe and you see a big storm is on the way, go ahead and harvest them. Any tomato that has started to show even a blush of color will finish ripening beautifully on your kitchen counter, safe from the sudden downpour that would have split them wide open. Of all the tomato problems, this is the one that strikes the most fear into a gardener's heart. Blight. The word itself sounds like a swift and total plague, and frankly, it can be. Blight is a fungal disease that can spread like wildfire and absolutely devastate your entire crop. The problem, you'll likely run into 2 main types: early blight and late blight. Early blight usually shows up on the lower, older leaves as small dark spots that grow into a target or bullseye pattern. The leaf around it turns yellow and eventually dies off. Late blight is the real monster. It appears as large, greasy-looking, water-soaked spots on leaves and stems, often with a fuzzy white mold on the underside. It can kill a plant in just a few days. Both blights are caused by fungal spores that are just waiting for wet, humid conditions to throw a party. These spores can hang out in the soil or on old plant debris. The number one way they infect your plant is from water splashing from the soil up onto the lower leaves. Watering from overhead, crowding your plants, and long stretches of humid, rainy weather create a perfect paradise for these fungi to take over. The solution: the best defense against blight is a good offense, and it all comes down to good garden hygiene. First, always water at the base of the plant with a drip line or soaker hose. Keep those leaves dry. Second, mulch. A thick layer of straw creates a physical barrier that stops soil-borne spores from splashing up. Third, give them some space. Good air circulation is critical. Space your plants at least 2 to 4 feet apart, and most importantly, you have to prune. Snip off the lower branches so no leaves are touching the ground. Then, prune out some of the suckers in the middle to open up the plant, allowing air to move freely and dry the leaves off quickly after rain or morning dew. If you do see signs of blight, act fast. Remove the infected leaves immediately and throw them in the trash, not the compost pile. This next disaster is just plain weird. It doesn't rot the fruit or kill the plant, but it creates these bizarrely puckered, scarred, and deformed tomatoes. It's called cat facing, and it's especially common on those big, beautiful heirloom varieties we love. The problem: cat facing results in some seriously ugly fruit, usually at the blossom end. You'll see deep grooves, puckers, and bands of brown, corky scar tissue. Sometimes the tomato looks like a few different fruits all fused together. While it's still technically edible if you cut the ugly parts off, it's a far cry from the perfect slice you were dreaming of. The cause? This is another physiological disorder, not a disease. Cat facing is caused by something that messes with the tomato flower as it's being pollinated. The number one culprit? Cold weather. When a tomato blossom is exposed to temperatures below about 50 degrees Fahrenheit or 10 degrees Celsius, it can cause the flower's parts to stick together and develop abnormally. That early damage to the flower leads directly to a mangled fruit. The solution: the main fix here is to protect your plants from the cold, especially when they're young and starting to flower. Patience is your friend. Don't rush to get your tomatoes in the ground too early. Wait until the nighttime temperatures are consistently staying above 50 degrees Fahrenheit or 10 degrees Celsius. If an unexpected cold snap is in the forecast, cover your plants at night. A frost blanket or even an old bed sheet can give them just enough protection. Honestly, for most gardeners, just waiting for warmer, stable weather solves the problem. You can also choose varieties that are less prone to it. Smaller heirlooms tend to be less susceptible than the giant beefsteak types. Our final disaster isn't a disease or a disorder, it's an invasion. You can do everything else right, but if you don't keep an eye out for pests, they can undo all your hard work in the blink of an eye. The problem? There's a long list of bugs that think tomatoes are delicious, from tiny aphids to giant hornworms. Aphids are small, sap-sucking insects that cluster on new growth and weaken the plant. But the most dramatic damage comes from the tomato hornworm. It's a huge green caterpillar that can strip a plant of its leaves seemingly overnight. You'll know you have them when you find bare stems and their telltale black droppings called frass on the leaves below. The cause pests are a natural part of any garden. A hornworm is just the baby stage of the sphinx moth, which lays its eggs on tomato leaves. An infestation happens when their populations get out of control and throw the whole system out of balance. The solution? The best organic approach is to become a garden detective. Make a habit of inspecting your plants every day or two, looking under leaves and along the stems. For hornworms, the best control is also the grossest hand-picking. They're big, but they camouflage surprisingly well, so look closely. When you find one, just pick it off and drop it into a bucket of soapy water. For aphids, a strong jet of water from the hose is often enough to knock them off. Better yet, attract beneficial insects like ladybugs. They're natural aphid-destroying machines. A fantastic strategy is companion planting. Planting things like dill, basil, or marigolds nearby can help repel some pests and attract those helpful predator insects to do the work for you. A little vigilance is the best pest control there is. So there you have it, the 5 most common heirloom tomato disasters and the simple ways to avoid them. Did you notice a theme? So many of these nightmares, blossom end rot, cracking, even blight, are managed by the same core principles: consistent watering, good airflow from pruning, and a healthy layer of mulch. When you focus on these fundamentals, you're not just treating problems, you're building a resilient garden that can naturally fend off most of these issues on its own. Growing heirloom tomatoes doesn't have to be a story of frustration. By understanding what your plants are trying to tell you and avoiding these common slip-ups, you are well on your way to that incredible brag-worthy harvest you've been dreaming about. It's about working smarter, not harder, and creating a healthy home for your plants to do their thing. And now you know how to do just that. If you found this guide helpful, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on more gardening tips to help you grow better. We're all in this together, chasing that perfect harvest. For your next step, be sure to check out our video on the best way to prune tomatoes right here. It is the single most important skill for preventing disease and getting way more fruit. Happy gardening!